Executive saloons or estates don't come any quicker than Audi's RS6. In fact, very few cars of any kind do, full stop. This car uses a Volkswagen Group's 5-litre V10, as seen in the Lamborghini Gallardo, and bolts on a pair of turbochargers. The result is 572 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, 0 to 124 miles an hour in 14.9 seconds, and one queasy looking Labrador. To be honest, the first generation Audi RS6 was a bit of an animal. It was a devastating cross-country tool with an engine note that sounded like a squadron of bombers flying overhead, and a stylistic aggression that made other road users want to abandon their cars and sprint for the nearest Anderson shelter. Now, that car had 429 brake horsepower, but this new generation version must face down a whole series of tough new rivals, primarily BMW's 507 brake horsepower M5, the first in that illustrious line to be offered in touring estate version, and Mercedes-Benz's 503 brake horsepower E63 AMG. Now, with 572 brake horsepower, this RS6 looks well equipped to argue a convincing case for air superiority. Now equipped with a 572 brake horsepower motor under this bonnet, this RS6 would seem on the face of it to make a convincing case for air superiority. The V10 in question is the same unit that's found in other star cars like Lamborghini's Gallardo and Audi's own S8. The Audi S6, the car demoted to the role of understudy by the RS6's arrival, also uses a version of that unit, but like these other cars, it's normally aspirated in form. Now, in the case of the RS6, Audi have used turbocharging to achieve that enormous power output. In fact, they've chucked in a couple of turbochargers, and as a result, this is the most powerful car that Audi has ever built. Oh, and the estate version chucks in 1,660 litres of luggage space too. The 572 braked horses course through the Quattro four-wheel drive transmission at 6,250 RPM, and impressively the 650 Newton meters of torque, that's that enormous pulling power, is available from as little as 1,500 RPM, that's just under trickling speed, all the way up to 6,250 RPM. So if you want to take on an RS6 away from the traffic lights, be warned. This car powers to 62 miles an hour from rest in just 4.6 seconds. So to live with that kind of pace, you're going to need something like a Porsche 911 GT3 RS or perhaps a Ferrari F430. Anything from an Aston Martin DB9 downwards need not apply. If the 155 mile an hour electronic limiter wasn't installed, then I think most drivers would run out of nerve and racetrack long before the RS6 ran out of steam. A series of component modifications and those twin turbochargers are responsible for all that power. You've got a 6-speed automatic gearbox and paddle shifts to control it, while an upgraded Quattro system has the unenviable task of getting all that grunt down onto the tarmac. The RS6 hints at its fearsome capabilities via a reworked exterior. The rear-end view that most rivals are going to have to get used to is dominated by these two huge oval exhaust pipes set into either end of the rear diffuser that's built into the rear bumper. At the front, the cooling ducts from the A6 base vehicle are supersized, and the wheel arches are flared around the standard 19-inch alloy wheels. Chrome side mirrors and side skirts complete the effect. Now, it's all rather low-key when you consider the fireworks that are going on under this bonnet, but Audi's RS models have always done a good line in low-key aggression. It's menacing rather than in your face. The ESP stability control system on the RS6 has been programmed to make late interventions, allowing the driver scope to enjoy the handling to the maximum. Now, the system will brake individual wheels and modulate the power if it thinks that the driver's losing control, but otherwise it gives the scope for the enthusiast to really enjoy the limits of this car. If you find even this setup too intrusive, you can even turn the whole ESP system off, but on your head be it. Braking is courtesy of a high-spec set of ceramic discs which are designed to reduce fade and take on the taxing job of bringing this not insubstantial vehicle back from the high velocities that it's capable of. Prices lie in the £75,000 to £80,000 bracket depending on your body style and spec choice. Now that's a lot for an executive saloon or estate, but not so much when you consider this one's performance credentials. Now the cars it needs to beat are BMW's M5 and Mercedes E63 AMG, both of which offer significantly less power but are in the £65,000 to £70,000 bracket. It's only really purebred supercars that can match the RS6 for pace, and they come with supercar price tags and supercar versatility, rendering them out of the question for many. Whatever your view on it, there's no doubt that you'll have an easier time justifying the purchase of an RS6 to your other half than that of a Lamborghini Gallardo. The RS6's interior does a decent job of justifying the premium pricing. Now the basic Audi A6 cabin is pretty good with some really nice design details, but the RS6, building on this firm foundation, feels really special. You've got the leather and Alcantara sports seats, a flat-bottomed RS steering wheel, some really expensive looking aluminium touches around the dash, and readouts for turbo pressure and oil temperature. Fuel economy for the RS6 is actually an almost reasonable 20 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, and that's only fractionally worse than the non-turbo S6. Mind you, this is never going to be a cheap car to run, so make sure that you've got some money left in the bank after meeting the asking price. Emissions range between 331 and 333 grams per kilometre of CO2, and insurance of course is a top of the shop Group 20. So who is it exactly who goes out and buys an executive saloon or estate capable of transporting a family of 5 and their luggage on a sub 8-minute lap of the Nürburgring, overtaking a gaggle of supercars in the process? This is definitely not your average executive saloon or estate, and that's a given. It's a car with an awesome array of talents, from the prodigious power output to the huge 1,660 litres of estate space that you get in this Avant version. And it's a car that takes the executive supercar arms race to a whole new level. Some would find the idea of a 5-seater car with a 5-litre, 572 brake horsepower bi-turbo V10 difficult to reconcile in a motoring age of proliferating speed cameras, spiralling fuel prices and emissions-based vehicle taxation. But you have to say that the motoring landscape would be dull indeed without cars like this. I mean, is the idea of a more practical yet equally powerful alternative to a Ferrari or a Lamborghini really so nonsensical? You see, I'm convincing myself already.